The Isle of Skye lies off the northwest coast of Scotland. On the west side of Skye, looking out to the remote islands of North Uist, Harris and Lewis, is Loch Dunvegan. That's also where you'll find the castle Dunvegan. It has been the ancestral home of the chiefs of the clan Macleod since the 12th century. If you ever visit the castle, you will see the famous fairy flag of the Macleod. This legend tells the tale of a handsome chieftain of the Macleods who fell in love with a fairy princess, one of the Shining People. She also fell madly in love with him. Her father, the Fairy King, refused to let them get married. Well, at first, they begged and begged and begged to be wed. The king explained to them that his daughter's heart would break as her husband would grow old and die, while she would live forever. The princess pleaded with her father. Moved by her tears, the king eventually agreed, but only on one condition. He told them they could only be married for a year and 1 day. After that, she must return forever to her fairy folk. The happy couple married and had a beautiful wedding, and within the year a son was born. But sadly, the year and 1 day passed all too quickly, and the time came for her to keep her promise to her father and return home. Her father waited for her on the bridge, known now as the Fairy Bridge. As the princess was preparing to leave her husband, the chieftain, she made him promise that their son would never be left alone to cry. As any mother knows, hearing their children cry can be heartbreaking, more so for the poor princess, as she wouldn't be able to comfort her son in any way. I'm sure you all know that fairies are magical beings, and even though she couldn't be with her son, she would still hear his cry, even from back in the fairy kingdom under the hills. With his promise given, she gave her husband and child one last kiss and then took her leave. The chief of the Macleod was devastated after his beautiful wife had to leave, and as time went by, his sadness only grew. After some time, with no end in sight to his sadness, the chieftain's friends and family decided to try cheer him up. They organised a feast in his honour. There was singing and dancing and piping and harping, and soon the chief began to enjoy himself. There was so much music and laughter that the baby's nursemaid slipped out of the nursery to watch the fun from the top of the stairs. The baby boy awoke and began to cry. The nursemaid did not hear him, and he was left to cry pitifully, all alone. When the nursemaid finally returned to the boy, a beautiful woman was sat with him, and she was wrapping the baby in a shawl and singing a lullaby. The nursemaid knew she would never forget such a beautiful tune. When the baby stopped crying, the woman kissed him and placed him back into his cradle, turned and left, vanishing into the darkness. When his son grew older, he told his father about the night his mother visited him, and he said that the shawl was made of magic and could be used by the Macleods when they were in great danger. The shawl was to summon the fairy knights to their side, but the flag could only be used 3 times. The chief immediately ordered a special casket to be made to hold the fairy flag, and he carried it with him at all times. Hundreds of years later, there came a time when the clan was in grave danger. An enemy clan, the MacDonalds, had raided the island. They attacked the Macleod church and set it on fire. All the poor people inside died praying. The Macleod warriors who were left were hopelessly outnumbered, but all wanted revenge for this heinous act. They gathered on the beach and unfurled the fairy flag. Magically, their numbers seemed to grow to 10 times its size. Their enemies were terrified by this turn of events, and they turned and ran, never to return again. The flag was put back safely in the casket in case it was ever needed again. A long time later, a devastating plague swept through the islands, and the cattle and the sheep lay dead and dying. Faced with decimation and hunger, the Macleods waved the fairy flag once more. Once again, the fairies came and touched their animals with their swords. Immediately, the cattle and sheep became healthy once again, and the clan was saved from starvation. The flag has not been used again, but the story goes that during the Second World War, when the threat of invasion was at its worst, the clan chief of the Macleods offered to bring the fairy flag to the White Cliffs of Dover. I wonder what Winston Churchill would have thought of this generous offer.